Hello, Ballarat. You all are from Ballarat, most of you? So can I just do a shout out to the mainstream media that this is not just Melbourne taking over Ballarat. My name is Jayde Jarvis. I'm a descendant of the Griffin family. And when asked this week, what does the Eureka flag mean to me? I was reminded of just how significant it really is. I was born here in Ballarat in 1991 and grew up on York Street, which is just around here. My father was born and raised here, so was his father and his father, meaning that my family have been residents in Ballarat for over 100 years. When I was younger, my father told me to look to the night sky, and there you'll find the Southern Cross. If you follow those stars, you'll always find your way home. To me, the Eureka flag represents my home. And I stand here today to represent my community. Eureka United, it stands for equality, unity, respect, empathy, kindness, and acceptance. That's what Eureka stands for. And these are the values that I hold. I'd like you all to take a moment to just look around, really look around. Look. And bear witness to the amount of people here today standing as one in hope for a better tomorrow. It's up to us to come together to support one another, regardless of opinions or choices, regardless of where you've come from or what you stand for. It's up to us to create a change in the world, to seek understanding and to accept our differences, to be compassionate and kind to one another. I stand here today to remind you that we're all human and that we're all capable of doing incredible things when we support and encourage one another. When we learn to accept our differences and when we stand truly by each other. And we the people will rise once again, as we have in history, and carry on the torch of freedom for the future generations. Thank you so much for being here, Ballarat! This is what community is about. We have a picnic every Sunday, the Eureka United group, and you're all invited at the Stockade to do this, to share stories, to stand by each other in support and acceptance. United.
Now that's a long intro, but I just couldn't bring myself to cut that speech because I think it's just a magnificent speech.
Yeah, there's no way to cut into it. No, absolutely.
No. And guess what? We've actually got her on board.
Jayde
Jarvis, welcome to Cafe Lock.
Hi.
Hi, Jayde.
Fun.
It was amazing. Seriously, an amazing speech. Honestly.
It felt amazing.
Yeah, felt great. Now, can I ask you, before you became this speaker, what were you doing in Ballarat?
I was trying to open up my own business, which is a wellness hub. We do meditation, I sell tea, but unfortunately I haven't been able to launch that. So I really wanted to get people together.
And what happened, when it all started happening? Were you a believer from the start, the narrative, and then something changed, or were you suspicious from the beginning?
No.
it was probably about 10 years ago that I personally kind of woke up to the fact that I was living this 9-to-5 life and it wasn't serving me positively. I just felt like I was in this robotic movement, and I'm like, there's got to be more to life. So it was 10 years ago that it all really started for me in wanting to do more independent researching for the truth, I guess. And then when all of this COVID stuff came into play, I was concerned at first, but then something in my gut was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is what, I guess, on a soul level, I've been alerted to quite a few years ago, so that I can be a light for others to come through this.
I have to say, you look like if you were 10 years ago, you'd be 10. So you're I'm only because I'm grey and grizzled. That
Yeah, I'm
I think
30.
you were
I'm
like in
30.
your early. You're 30. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. There's and you were friends with Zoe Bueller, who on Saturday we had her speaking at the rally where she did an amazing speak, and then yesterday we met her and had her on the show, and she's amazing. I love her, and that's how we met you. Now, how has it been setting up this? Well, first off, setting up the picnics. How has it been becoming an organizer in Ballarat? How have the public treated you?
Hard. It's been really tough, but at the same time, it's been so easy because we've had so much support. So it's not just me doing all of this. There's actually a really strong committee that's involved, and you know, they were mostly involved with putting everything on yesterday. My involvement with it all is just being the representative for Eureka United, which is the community that I created. So I started that 2 months ago. As I said before, I wanted to create a support network where people could come together and feel like they were still a part of community. And then when I did that, that's when Mark and I kind of crossed paths, and he had a lot of involvement with what was going on down in Melbourne. And I kind of thought, well, we need it in Ballarat. We need to get it out there. We need people to actually see what's going on in the streets in terms of how positive it is, how kind everybody is, how we're all coming together for such a beautiful thing. And the mainstream media are just sweeping through, trying to jeopardize the integrity of everything that everybody's standing for. So that was why I created this community. And from there, well, it started as a Facebook group. And in that group, I invited people that I knew who were like-minded and were really concerned about being isolated, segregated, about the passports getting implemented and restriction of movement and whatnot. So invited all them in, and it grew rapidly within a week. So our first barbecue, we only had 30 people. And then the week before the rally, so not last week, the week before, we had close to 100.
Okay.
I'm expecting there'll be about 200 next week after yesterday. So.
And can I ask, when you said it was hard, what's been hard?
Ballarat. I love Ballarat. I tried to leave this town. I've obviously, yesterday my speech, I said I was born and raised in Ballarat. I tried to leave. Apparently there's a curse with this town that if you leave, you will always come back. So for me, I saw that as a challenge, as this is where I needed to be to try and make a difference. That I'm grounded here. This is my home. I've got kids. I've got all of my family here. So I've kind of taken this responsibility to really step up and try and get the truth out there to the community. And my God, it is not easy. It is.
Did you say, Jay, did you say that you're a descendant from one of the
Griffin family? The Griffin family.
So could you explain that to us? Because, okay. What's the Griffin? What does that mean?
I just wanted to basically make an impact to mainstream media, because the week leading up to it, they were just trying so hard to say, you know, be scared. There's all of these really angry protesters that are going to come in and they're going to cause a ruckus. And, you know, I got labeled as an anti-vax, as a right-wing extremist, as a Nazi. I've had that so much today. And I was in tears this afternoon because there's a couple of groups out there that we go into to try and spread this positive light and this truth, and it just gets sucked down. So again, the Griffin thing is my father, his father, are Ballarat. So I wanted them to know that it wasn't Melbourne invading and taking over the streets. This was initiated by me, by the Eureka United crew, by Mark, by Sam, by Zoe, by Alicia. Like, we all brought it here. It was not a takeover at all. It was Ballarat wanting to be seen and heard.
And there was some actual descendants, wasn't there? Some descendants of the Eureka Rebellion there yesterday. Could you talk a little bit about that? Who were they and what that story is?
Oh my God, it was such a surprise. He was fantastic. I believe his name was Mark. I think it was Mark. He, with his speech at the start of the day on the ute, I was standing with him because he came out of nowhere. He said that he actually came to Ballarat this weekend to go to the Eureka Stockade commemorative service, which council cancelled. So he found us, and he thought,
we get to the closing of that? Yeah.
He's like, I'm actually going to go. He came to us because he saw what we were doing and he supported us, and he just took over the stage, and we were all like, oh my God, because the week leading up to it, we were looking for a descendant and we couldn't find one. So this was just like, here you go.
Yeah. And who was his descendant? Who was his descendant?
So he said that there were the three, so Peter Lalor and two other men on the battlefield who initiated the Eureka Rebellion. He was a direct descendant of one of the men who stood beside Peter Lalor. So I think he was the great-great-grandson of one of the men who were actually present at the rebellion, which...
How important do you think that tradition is? Because I think that's something that this sort of globalist push is trying to destroy. They're trying to break down any of our roots that we've got with community, etc. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We need to remember our history. We need to tap into that, and we need to really understand what took place instead of thinking that we already know by what we've been told. And hearing those first-hand stories and seeing him standing up there yesterday, it was quite obvious that what we were doing was the right thing. For someone,
is that why you're drawn back to Ballarat, even though you have some misgivings about the town? Is that why you're drawn back to it? Because that's actually where your roots are, where you identify.
I think so. As much as I'm constantly like, I want to get out of here. Like,
it's sort of what Indigenous people would call country, isn't it? It's what to them they would call country. It's important to be on country.
Yes. Yeah. And I have so much respect for them as well. I do a lot of energy work, so I'm really feeling that this is a lot to do with ancestors. It's a lot to do with what's happening with the earth, and we're really being called to step up and to reconnect with ourselves on that level of having the authentic awareness and not constantly consuming what the mainstream's putting out there for us. Like,
and you got
it's a complete shift in reality.
You got some big names there. You got Kelly, who's under a lot of fire at the moment. You got the Cossack, who's a huge draw card, and it was a Topher Field, who's coming up with us to Shepparton this week.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
And,
so a lot of that was all Mark with his involvement in the Melbourne scene there as well. So he was able to invite them along, and obviously they were really passionate about it, like Cossack himself, flying the Eureka flag.
And you got to meet Abby. We've had Abby on the show. Abby's one of the organisers.
Yeah,
I think
they were. Yeah, it was just fantastic to see them and have them there in person, because it kind of brought home what all of this means. We've got people in Ballarat and they will sit there and they'll watch Rukshan's feed or Avi's feed, and they'll think, fantastic, like, it's awesome what's happening, but they're still just sitting at home wondering how they can get involved and what they can do to, make a change, I guess. So it was good to actually have them in our town, because rather than, it's just Melbourne, it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Now it's here, it's home. So it was awesome.
In these past 2 years, was there any incident or major incidents that saw you go from sort of watching and being suspicious to actually spurned you to be a catalyst and active?
Yeah. Yep. I guess, like, being honest, I've always been waiting for this time myself to really step up and start making an impact. But it was when my own family started shutting me out that I realized how bad this is getting.
Is that immediate family or like cousins?
Yeah.
Immediate family.
My grandparents. And it
was that around the COVID narrative or before that?
Yeah. So it was when all the vaccine mandates started coming in and everybody was given that choice. I had to stand firm because I know what's happening and I can feel it. So I guess I'm the one person out of my probably 100 family members that is taking a stand here. But it was within those moments where the mandates started rolling out and people started turning away from me and, you know, being really concerned about me and my choices because I wasn't thinking about the health of my kids.
What is your stance? I mean, what is your stance? We saw your speech, but is it erosion of freedoms? Is it choice, or what is it?
I think it comes back down to unity and accepting each other and our differences. I don't understand why we have allowed such a divide to come between communities, families, based on choice. And, you know, I blame the hierarchy who are dictating the whole thing. And people say, oh, you know, you can't blame anybody because you chose that. You had that choice. You chose
Jayde,
to, you know, yes.
No, it's great. It's really good. I just wanted to ask you, you said something happened to you 5 years ago. You were working 9 to 5 and you felt something was wrong. So what was that? That's well before the COVID narrative. So what can you describe to us what that exactly was?
That was my awakening. 100%. And I really want to start a podcast and talk to people about similar experiences because I've had a lot of people come to me and go, you know, I'm losing my mind. I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. And that's that constant feeling like you've got to keep up and making the income to pay for this and all of the bills and the fear of letting go of a job. So I've actually let go of so much. And it was that first moment for me. I was actually working full-time at Bunnings. And, you know, I had that full-time money coming in, but on a core level with my heart, I was like, I've got to let this job go. I'm so much more than just a checkout chick at a warehouse. Like, on a soul level, I have so much more to give and offer in terms of compassion and holding space for other people to listen to their experiences and their stories. So it was my awakening. That's what it was.
Oh, wow. I like this girl.
It's something about the corporations, isn't it? Because like Wesfarmers, it was a great they took over all the small little hardware stores, and suddenly everything became a Bunnings, and now there's this corporate elite that says, well, you can't go in unless you're man. So you can't even. There's no alternative because there's no little corner hardware store. Sure, it makes hammers cheaper, but at the end of the day, look what it's done to us. In the end, it's just caught us in an absolute bind, hasn't it?
Yeah. And this, like, I'm really at the stage where I do want to speak up because, like, 10 years ago, when I first came into this myself and discovered that there was just something really wrong with everything that was going on, I actually got put into the psychiatric unit. So that for me was, it was such an experience. And,
when was that?
People looked at it. That was part of my awakening. Because I came across so erratic and so desperate to be like, this isn't right. This isn't serving me. I can't do this anymore. It was seen as, she's not okay. Like, she's not okay. We need to medicate her. We need to silence her. So I was silent for years.
Can you talk us through that? Exactly what happened? Like, what was that process? What did that involve?
So that was part of the awakening, when I was ready to start speaking truth of what I was discovering. And, I'm sure a lot of people are going through this at the moment when they turn away from the mainstream and start doing research themselves and going down the rabbit hole, as they say. Got to a point where I'm like, I need to share this. People need to know what's coming because this is like, you know, this is really, really intense. It's real. What's happening is real. And a lot of people are still turning that blind eye to it. So I guess back then the world wasn't ready to hear it. So I got silenced and put away.
What happened? Did someone tell the authorities, or how did that process work?
So I turned to my family, but at that stage they weren't really aware at all. It just I came across as being so unwell, so mentally unstable. So it was like, okay, they did what they thought was best by putting me in there. But I guess that really was a lesson to me, like, when you discover the truth, they will try and silence you at all costs.
How long were you in there for?
Only a week, down the rabbit hole. I was just reading a comment from someone saying it's a lonely place. Yeah, I was in there for a week, but it was long enough for me to go, okay, people aren't really ready to kind of step out and grasp the truth. But now, being 10 years ago that happened to me, now it's a completely different story.
Because and what was everybody... like in there for a week? Sorry, Michael, I'll stop in a second.
No, go ahead.
What was it like? What was it like in there for a week?
It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. It was basically, you know, I try and explain what I was going through and say, I don't want to work a full-time job. I don't want to be doing these things. And they'd say, well, it's not normal. It's not normal to want to not work a job. And this is psychiatrists and psychologists just regurgitating the information that they've taken from books to say, you know, it's not normal to want to quit your job. Like, there's something wrong with you. You need to have medication.
Did they medicate you? you?
Yeah.
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 What was it? What was the medication?
So they actually diagnosed me with bipolar and put me on Seroquel,
mm-hmm.
which was intense. It was intense. I rebelled against that. I was like, no. I know I'm in my truth. And when, like, connecting to my heart, doing meditation and everything, it was basically like, you know what's going on, but right now isn't the time to speak about it.
Yeah, some brilliant leaders have bipolar. You know, there used to be I think the head of Fox years ago, Ted someone, and there's quite a lot of geniuses with bipolar.
Definitely.
It really is a lot of great actors and musicians and stuff.
Yeah, it was just it was that experience for me. Like, okay, when you step into that knowledge of knowing the truth and awakening, they're going to shut you down. And that's why right now I don't have fear, because I know exactly what's going on. I have no fear. I have no doubt to start speaking, regardless of all of the hate that I've been getting today, just after the rally from my hometown.
Today you've been getting a lot of hate?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? What's the hate?
Yeah, we can. So most of it was from a platform that has been created to support one another. But if it goes against the grain and the mainstream and what they've come to understand, it's wrong. So, you know, yesterday at the rally, it's claimed that there was a bit of rubbish left around. So
they do that one all the time. That's their standard, like, complaints.
Bit of rubbish.
Oh my! I was in that park right at the end. There was no rubbish. There was none. I know. It was like you didn't have to use a vacuum cleaner, though. I mean, it was ridiculous.
We actually remained around and did our show from the park. So that's where we did. So we actually stayed around there. Then we ate with you. We dined together. It was really lovely. You know,
and if you don't believe us, have a look at our backdrop, because it was the park, and people can access and have a look for themselves and see the state the park was left in. It's pristine grass.
Yeah. So there was rubbish left around, and these horrible protesters came into town and trashed the place, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And I said, hang on a minute. The streets of Ballarat after a Saturday night are disgusting. After people have been out drinking and getting drunk and carrying on in Lydiard Street, the streets are disgusting. But when we leave a bottle or two lying around after what they've seen as a really horrible protest, it's caused so much debate and hate. So me putting my comment up there, I was like, hang on a minute. And I actually had to point out something that happened yesterday. So before the rally, I was walking around Civic Hall taking posters down that said Nazis are not welcome in Ballarat.
Well, you know, we...
So I said, okay, we're going to talk about rubbish, but what about the vandalism that got put up before the rally about Nazis? I said, where are the Nazis?
Mate, I went to the toilet twice right throughout the day, and each time it was like 10 or 12 deep to have to wait to queue to get into these two toilets. I mean, really, people could have been just ducking off, particularly blokes, you know. It's easy for us just to duck off and go behind a tree or something. But no, we're all queuing, you know. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Mark's just commented and said we've cleaned up Civic Hall before we started, and we did.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Just trying to see if I can get this. Hold on.
I copped a lot of that being, oh, you're just a Nazi and you're a conspiracy theorist and you're so brainwashed and mentally
Jayde,
insane. But it's
along the way we stopped, and you sort of gave us the creed. We stopped at what was formerly Baker's Hill, which was actually the site where the Eureka Stockade took place back in, was it 1864?
Bakery.
Yeah, Bakery Hill. Sorry, Bakery Hill. Yeah. And so you stopped there and you recited the creed. Could you recite that creed for us?
The Eureka Oath. Yes.
Oath. Yeah.
And it is, we swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties.
Now,
so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And I'll tell you what I love about it. It's brevity. I think a lot of people in this movement could take a note from the brevity of the Eureka movement. You know, that's it. It encapsulates it. 167 years later, still able to recite it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to a lot of marches, Jayde, and just come on. I have to say, I bring my camera, and because I'm very interested to capture some of the Nazis. Now, I don't recognize these people, so I'm just going to bring up 4 photos to see if you can pick the Nazi for us. So here's one. I don't know if that's her. Maybe she's grandma.
All of them in that photo, I'd say.
She's grandma Nazi. Can we just stop the comments for a sec? So that's grandma Nazi. Here's one. That's mother bringing up 3 female Nazis. Here's one. I think this is definitely one. Yeah. That's you're gonna have to look after that one. And here's some more. So yeah, I don't know if you spotted them. I look everywhere, you know.
And
I actually love this photo behind. What I love about the photo behind, I'll just get out of the shot for a sec, is they were standing there and we got the red flag, but there's the Eureka flag. Now, some of these young men flying that flag, I've gone all blurry. There's some of the Eureka flag. They might not even know the names of the 22 men who died, or even the story of it, and yet their sacrifice has seen this flag, and that flag is all through Australia now. And what it symbolizes freedom, it symbolizes standing up against oppression. It symbolizes it's the people's flag, and so this is the beauty of sacrifice. I know it's awful having 22 men die like they did, but here it is. It's an enormous, beautiful legacy. I love seeing that flag, and seeing it there on that thing was great.
I think that's why, you know, with my speech, I wanted to just bring in some values, because people see the flag and, you know, council went out there and mainstream media went out there and said that, oh, they're sabotaging Eureka, they're claiming the flag, and it's like, the flag doesn't belong to anybody. It's a symbol, and it's a reminder of what they were fighting against back then. And, you know, when 9 News took the snippet of my speech and said what I actually had said was that back then they were standing up for their rights and freedoms, we're quite literally doing the same thing. So it's not that we're hijacking the flag and claiming it as our own because it belongs to nobody. It is a symbol for all of us that they were being oppressed. They were being told that they weren't allowed to do this unless they had a license. Just like
if they had a piece of paper, they can't work and support their families.
Christmas shopping unless I show my smartphone.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's the same narrative they used against us when we ended up on the shrine. It's exactly the same narrative. It's like the state wants to keep the status quo locked in place, whatever it's meant to be. Yeah. And they're coming in hard with it. And, you know, I'm sure you guys know where this is heading. And
I know a couple of people who do also. So, you know,
no, Jayde, you can't just get away with that. You have to tell us now, where is this heading?
Actually, before we get there,
I want to get you institutionalized again, but I've just...
That's a really great way to sort of go. But before we go there, can we just go back a bit? Because you pressed over something small, which is actually
You're lucky, Jayde. You're
core
lucky.
issue. Now we'll come back to it, I promise. We'll get to the core issue of all of this. And now people say you're not being discriminated against because you've got a choice. But you've made a choice. You've chosen no. So if you actually go, I choose no, but then do it, even though you've chosen no, you don't have a choice. You're just being forced to do it. And if you're forced to do it against your choice, against your conscience, against the voice in your soul, you're a slave. You're no longer living in a free country. And that's that simple core is it. And that's the principle that a lot of people are fighting for. And out there, I think even with your family, no offense, I think a lot of people haven't looked deep enough into that to realize it's not only worth something fighting for, it's worth something fighting for, it's worth dying for, as these 22 men did. So I think there's distinct parallels between the two Eurekas.
And okay, so I'll come back to what we were trying to avoid there, because it will tie in together in saying that we don't have a choice. They're giving us a choice. It's whether you want to be compliant and be a part of their totalitarian system, or whether you want to be outlawed and depend on survival within your community. So the government and the mainstream have made it perfectly clear. I mean, these politicians themselves have said New World Order. This was labelled as a conspiracy theory for so many years, but what's actually going to come about if we don't draw the line and if we don't say no and put our foot down towards these vax passports? There's no coming back from that. Where does it stop? You know, and over the last 10 years, we've seen technology just rapidly be pushed into our faces. Like even kids now in prep, they don't learn to read books and write with a pen. It's just an iPad. So, you know, it's more than just getting a vaccine and COVID and health. That's just the story that most of people are reading. But then when you step away from the story and look for the truth, that's where you go, okay, they're really trying to change the entire world here.
Yeah, I have to get back with the kids with the iPad. I remember when my kids were small, they're in a primary school, and they wanted to bring in iPads. And the school was full of barristers and lawyers and doctors and stuff. We were just the poor people in the school. But they fought a huge battle to stop it. And they were just overridden. And then they said that the kids couldn't access games or porn or anything. They said that was absolutely impossible. And the kids were doing it. I remember one little kid came up to the stage brought by his parents. And in a minute and a half, this little kid bypassed all the security things and was playing games, you know, and he was like in grade 3. And it was just shown to be bullshit. And they just did not care about the parents at all. No. They wanted the things. And what happened was the kids stopped drawing. They weren't drawing as much. They weren't this as much. They had this. It was really interesting. It's just when you brought that up, I remember that, because it was, you know, it was a really interesting fight. Another one we lost, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the tech age. Everything computerized, and it's really scary, honestly. Because you know, when you do go through that awakening and you can connect to source, or you know, a lot of people will call it God or Buddha or whatever your religion is, this external source that guides you, and connecting to earth. It's no secret that we're destroying the earth. These massive corporations are just sucking it dry. They're selling off land. They're selling our money. It's all of it. And none of it serves humanity in a positive way. It's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable system, and it's only a matter of time before it collapses. So if we choose to go down that route, it doesn't have sunshine and happy days at the end of it. Like, the only way for us to really, I guess, save ourselves and the earth is to draw the line on it.
Is to fight.
And it's going to be really hard with the technology thing, because if they're implementing that as, you know, you've got to have your smartphone to be able to go into shops, well, okay, we're going to have to learn to live without that.
Well, look how we're having this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I just want to bring up, the other thing that's happening now is an acceptance of things that are unacceptable. And it's going across the board. Like, say, your grandparents and family disowning you. I interviewed an old woman in the street that was in the march, and she said, come to the march, she had a dog. She goes, all I've got is a dog. My whole family's vaccinated, and they won't have anything to do with me until I get vaccinated. I'm not doing it, so I'm totally alone. And I hear these stories all the time, but then I interviewed this woman, and I just want to bring up this. We'll stay in, but I found this particularly moving.
And what do you do, or what did you used to do?
Well, I used to be a wildlife rescuer for Wildlife Victoria in Melbourne.
And what does that mean?
Well, what it means is all of us rescuers and carers that are, it's a non-profit organisation. Wildlife Victoria is our telephone call centres, where if we need help with the Australian wildlife, us volunteers get the call and we go out there and rescue the wildlife as best as we can. And right now, because of Andrew's put in these vaccine mandates, a lot of us carers and wildlife, like myself, who have been stood down because we do not want to get the jab for health reasons. And now the Wildlife Victoria is in a lot of trouble due to the fact that a lot of wildlife aren't getting attended to the scenes. I do work with macropods, which are kangaroos, and a lot of them get hit by cars. And if they're there for hours and hours and hours in pain, none of us are there to help. So I was very shattered. I've had my fair share of tears that I can't go out there and do my part for Australia like I was. And now I've got to miss out because of Andrew's law, which I cannot understand why us wildlife rescuers are not frontliners. We deal with animals. Mainly all my cases are out in the paddock, so I'm not dealing with people. I'm dealing with the animals themselves. So I can't understand why I'm a health risk to anybody else. And that's just the sad thing about what we're going through.
What a beautiful woman.
But how can, listen to her logic, though. She goes to a paddock. There's no humans. She picks up a roo that's been hit by a car, and she tries to save it. But now she can't do it because, who knows, she might give the kangaroo who's dying COVID. I don't know what the reasoning is. That's what I'm saying about the rise of people accepting the unacceptable. And this is that's only one example. This is across the board.
That there is also such a plain as day that they don't give a crap about the environment or the animals or people's passions and commitment to making an impact and a positive change. They just want to enforce their compliance and system. It's like, do this or you're not allowed to do what you came here to do.
So why do you think so many people can't see that? I mean, before this happened, most people would say they don't trust the government. Why are they so trusting now, to the point that they'll ostracize family members, they'll look the other way as people lose their jobs. They'll basically, a lot of people out there still idolize the man. What is that? What do you put that down to?
The fear and the psychological warfare of the mainstream media having control over the smartphones, over the news, over the radio stations, and they've implemented it, and we've been.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at something Damien did before. Go on.
I'm just sitting here.
No, I'll bring it up. You're going. Sorry, Jayde. Please continue.
Okay. No, it's just.
I'll just say it then, so it's out the way, so people don't think I'm being rude. Damien and I sometimes go together somewhere in the car, and Damien won't listen to most of the radio stations because they're all going the jab shit. So he listens to this old time radio that plays
Good.
like Roll Out the Barrel, and we just sit
I'm
there
the
driving along
same.
going,
I listen to 102.3. I'm like, I can't.
It's
like being
songs
in
from my mother's era, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Like,
the 80s
It's
music.
like being in the
further back than
the
that.
bus-
That's my
bus-
era, unfortunately.
like being in the bus.
It's your
with the
mother's
nursing
era,
home.
not mine.
And that's the only one that doesn't play all that shit. That's why I laughed. I'm not
honestly-
laughing at you, Jade. Please continue.
No,
You were up
on that
to,
note as well. Look at the music today. Look at the mainstream. They focus on like publishing sex, violence, drugs, and auto-tuned to a frequency that is just brainwashing. And the kids don't even realize it. Like, look at what happened at that concert. I can't even remember what his name was.
Oh, yeah.
One of the Kardashians' boyfriends.
Oh, I didn't hear about this. Someone said.
People died at that event because they're just, they emit a frequency that the brain just switches. So it's all like, this is another topic altogether, but the mainstream music, what they're putting out there is horrible. It's disgusting. It's
the rapper. I can't remember his name.
it's just Travis Scott. That's it. Just
That's it,
pulling
Travis Scott,
pulling the youth away from being kids, away from being innocent. They're trying to shove them into this thing, and this
That's
is
been
with
happening for a
the
while, though. I remember my
mandates
mum.
on the younger generations too. Yeah,
remember my
it has
mum-
been going on for a while, but it's a slow implementation. But you don't see bands getting promoted anymore.
Yeah, but
You
I
don't
remember
see
my
real
mum about
music.
20 years ago, going to her first protest, and I was like, I'd called up. She said, "I'm off to a protest." I'm going, "A protest? You? What are you protesting about?" And they were in Target or Kmart, one of those. I think it was Target, and they were selling G-strings to little girls. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They could all 10-year-old. They could wear G-strings, sort of. And she was protesting that. So
It's got to be a
was
fashion
really interesting.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the reality, isn't it? Now, with Fiona Patton's new laws, we can now sell to our daughters a really fine, healthy option because it's decriminalised. So how can you argue against it? That they could set up a brothel, maybe in the room, that they're living in with you. That would be a fine option because it would be legal. And what right would I have as a parent to even suggest that it wasn't a fine and upstanding thing to do with your time? Make some quick, fast, easy.
Made it morally correct.
It honestly just baffles me. It's like how can people look at that reality and go, yeah, I'll just accept this. I'll just continue to play along with this.
Been commodified,
And you've got a problem with it, you go down to the church, but if you're not vaccinated, you can't get in because the church is practicing apartheid, which is also morally correct.
And it's just like they closed the Eureka Centre on us yesterday. They were so excited to do it.
Let's get to this. This is a great way to get to this. So the day was the weekend's about celebrating the Eureka Stockade. We had Melbournians and Victorians, basically, the Victorians there, because a lot came from other towns, basically there to do a protest defending freedom because the miners protest against having a piece of paper that they could work. Without they couldn't work. Now we've got a vaccine passport. You don't have that, you can't work. So they were there protesting freedom, basically a parallel universe. Just there it is, literally on the anniversary. And what did they do? They shut the museum. In fact, they shut the whole town.
No, they warned the town, didn't they? They warned the town about us coming, so they suggested that they should shut down.
And this has been another thing on these groups in Ballarat today. They've gone and said, "Oh, these protesters forcing us to close our businesses," and they're blaming us.
But don't they usually do close on Sundays? Or do they generally do Sunday trading?
Council and the police and the mainstream media put out a warning and told them that it would be best for them to close their doors because violent protesters were going to take over the city.
I was walking with Richard Wollstonecroft, and he actually suggested that we probably would do better if we did have uniforms and had a little bit of a march going and stuff like that. Like suddenly 15,000, 10,000 people down, Sturt Street. Maybe then we'd have more chance of getting what we wanted. The state would really sit up and take notice then.
Richard does our show with us. I'll just bring this up before we go on because this is really funny. So Richard does our show with us. I've got a picture of him here somewhere, and this was his first ever rally in his whole life. Basically, this was it. I waited for his picture to come up. And we were laughing because out of all of us, he's the one that looks closest to a white supremacist.
He's the closest, looks closest to Hermann Goering. And even that jacket he had over his arm is an exact replica of it. It's got like a cut-off collar and stuff, just like Goering used to wear.
But he came with another friend from Castlemaine, David, who also works with us. David refuses to partake in all of this, and they went to get some food, and they couldn't. They couldn't get David into anywhere. And Richard said he felt like he was in the deep south of America, like Mississippian times, in the times of segregation. And David, who's blonde, blue-eyed, was his black friend, and he wasn't allowed in anywhere. And that's where we are now. And that's another thing that is unacceptable, that people just accept, you know. Now, can we get back to why do you think the media is so driven, as well as the government, to portray the protesters? And you saw it yourself. There's no lie. If you're in the protest, it's beautiful. Handshakes, people getting on, everyone's smiling. There's laughter everywhere. There's, you know, there's... And people are coming now just because they love being there. You know, here's one. I'll get this picture up. So there's, I find them joyous things to be in. They're completely diverse, and all about the same. They're singing for freedom and decency and parental rights, all these things, and yet the media and the government portraying them as like absolutely evil. Here's one smiling guy. I've seen him at a few. He comes with his brothers, and so they're coming along and they portray them as that. Why are they portraying them as the polar opposite of what they actually are, in your opinion? Why are they doing that?
They don't want us doing what we're doing.
Why?
Because we're reigniting the human spirit. We're reminding people. We're reminding people of the truth. We're reminding people that we need to come together, and they don't want us doing that because we're easier to control when we're isolated in our homes and when we're segregated and divided.
And the media are big pharma anyway. They actually are big pharma. They're owned by
they're funded by big pharma.
Oh, it's all just one system that just wants to control everything.
So, Kylie, what's the solution then? Like, because it's been interesting to me, like there's this idea, I know there's a lot of the Indigenous community been getting involved, and their idea is that we go back to some sort of spirit time and trust their ancestors. Is it something that we want to go back to a Commonwealth and understanding of what we were as a Commonwealth nation? But I suppose there's no point thinking we're going to go back to anything, because the world has changed. The world is fundamentally changing. Like you said, there's issues that do confront us as humans. You talk about the earth and exactly preserving it, and how we go about that. There's so many people living on this planet that weren't living here even 20 or 30 years ago. So what can we look forward to? If we're rejecting the agenda that's being offered us by the globalists, what can we look forward to?
I guess this is why I created Eureka United, because I want to, so establishing these little communities, anybody can do that. Anybody in any town can do that. All it takes is one person to invite a couple of people and they do the same thing, and it's a domino effect. So we really need to just get back together, away from the system, away from the phones. The phones aren't really connecting us. Like, this is fantastic, this is great, but what we need to be doing is stepping away from that and coming together again and sharing our stories and our concerns, because that's where we're going to get the truth from. And we realize...
The people that want to control us, are they going to allow us to do that? Say there's a healthy 10% of us, which is still a significant amount of people. Will they let us devolve from the system?
Are they going to round us up, or are they going to track us down, or are they going to just let us go and say, yeah, good luck to you, assuming that we won't survive without the system, which we will. We won't just survive, we will thrive.
Well, I was talking to some Croatian women when I was walking along in the march, and they were telling me that there's groups of militias forming Croatia already. Militias that are militias on our side. They've got weapons left over from the wars, and they're forming.
Been to that before, haven't they?
And they're forming armies, to defend themselves from the idea of, if the government does come and say you people aren't allowed to form your own communities, then they're ready to fight.
Well, look at what's been happening in the Northern Territory. Like, nobody's really looking into this stuff. People are. And this is what I it happened.
Well, that's what Eureka was, wasn't it? Eureka was a fight. Eureka was a gun battle. It wasn't just everyone saying, I love you, it's going to be great, kumbaya. Actually, no, state, you're going to come and take it. You're going to have to take lives. You're going to have to cross the threshold. Is there something that we need to take from that, or what in your opinion?
Hey, if we look back in the past, and I watched a really good video that was all about how we have constantly fought these wars and there has been a lot of bloodshed, but it's like, is that going to be the answer? I don't know. Is that what's coming? Again, I don't know. All I'm feeling and all I know is that we need to come together. So whether that is we're coming together because there's a fight ahead, or whether we're coming together to recreate community, like, I guess
that's the nature of a civil war, isn't it? When a community can no longer come together because their differences are so polarized that it's impossible to find a center for them to come together again.
And that's what's happening. So I've put it out of, taken it away. It's past that point where we can wake them up, per se. If they were going to, they would have already done that. So I guess we're the people that are going to need to.
One thing that happened the other night was the news from the Royal Melbourne that people who'd had the third booster were going in. Apparently Melbourne Hospital announced that people with the third booster or the first booster, whatever, 2 shots in the booster, were going into hospital and were sick. And so there's truths coming out. But just to everybody in Ballarat that's looking, look at this. I talked to this. I want to show you the difference where you're frightened of us. Just stop the comments for a sec. Where you're frightened of us. So this woman, apparently the daughter with the glasses is like some sort of genius, she said. She's got this woman with her 3 children determined to save them. Now, these people are seen as a danger to society. And if Dan in the 15th does what he's done before, if this woman comes to a protest with her kids like this, she's going to be met with this. So this woman standing up for her freedom and the right to look after her kids is going to be met with this. And now Dan owns 4 of these things. All of them are armed. You can see they're different weapons here. So this versus this. Now, if you're out there, can you truly not see that maybe that's an overreach? Because Damien and I have been to some very, very big marches coming on. And I hear what Damien's saying. I'm not an advocate of that. I actually believe we can get through this peacefully. But what we have to do is get the few people who are governing, like even the men in that thing all dressed in black, to go, I'm not going to do this to my own people. There has to be another way to deal with this virus rather than subjugating everyone against their will.
They're not even dealing with the virus when they turn to these kind of tactics. They're just implementing that control and that fear. It's like, if you're going to rebel against us, we're going to use force against you. And I've been wondering recently, he had all of the armored vehicles there. They were shooting rubber bullets at the shrines. There was heavy police presence, and now all of a sudden there isn't. Where are they?
But instead of stopping people, it actually ignited, it stopped people for a while. But once the lockdown's finished, the protesters came back and they grow. And even last week, after we lost the bill, we still had a really healthy number of people there. I got told that the trains are literally standing room only of people coming from the country coming in. So, yeah.
Jayde,
it's very interesting.
It's really hard.
What does faith mean to you? Sorry, you want to answer that question? You can be prepared now. You're ready, because that's the next question.
Yeah. No, all I was going to say is that it's really hard for us to try and predict what's coming for us, whether it is going to be just a peaceful transition where we can recreate these communities, or whether there's going to be a fight ahead. We don't know.
Oh, just saying to this person here, Cummings, a lot of these guys, a lot of them UN forces, that's actually a mistake. We actually, Damien especially, when we're at the shrine, he talked to lots of them. They're Aussie. They were Aussie. People want to believe it's UN so they can pretend, because they can't fathom that ordinary Australians would shoot on ordinary Australians. But they did. I
talked to Commander Greg Hinton, and he was very Australian. and he was the commander on the acting commander on that day.
Aussies. In fact, they were telling us most of the day, look, if you don't move, we're going to start shooting.
Now, Jayde, you've had a chance. You've had a drink of water, so you're ready. You know the question.
Turn the light on.
Did you turn the light on, or is that the light of God?
Yeah. He's answering the question for you.
That's the question for you.
So yeah, what's faith mean to you in this? Obviously, you've been talking about that sort of stuff. So I want to specifically talk to you about it. I know it's a difficult area, but I'd be really interested.
Yeah. Faith is probably having faith in yourself and belief in yourself before anything else. To me, that's what it means, because a lot of people are constantly looking externally for a thing to cling to in hope as that's what I believe in, that's what's going to save me, when really, if we go within and look at ourselves, that's where we're going to find truth and ignite what we're really here for. And stepping into that authenticity is what's going to allow us to connect to people. So faith is, it all comes back to having belief and trust in each other.
Do you pray?
I meditate. And when I meditate, I feel that I'm able to, I guess, connect to source. So whether that's, my interpretation of it is that there's an energy, or let's call it a library of everything that we can all tap into, because we're essentially all here experiencing the same thing, and we're just seeing different versions of reality. So if we're all able to tap into that one source and just come together in understanding and acceptance, regardless of whether you're overseas and that's your belief, or here in Australia and you're a Catholic, or whether you're a Buddhist, like, it shouldn't be an external thing.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because we were talking before, and I was just thinking, because we're talking about, say, Bunnings that now dominates the landscape as far as hardware, and it's using that as an example. But that's the example that's being set. So we've got this idea now that we have to be involved in the collective will. It's always about the collective will. So the collective will now is we all need to take this vaccine and arm up against this virus. And if you just shut up and do it, everything will be all right. As versus, and then no one takes any responsibility. Like even when that hotel quarantine didn't work, and Daniel Andrews' classic line was, oh, well, I don't know who made that decision. It was a creeping assumption. It was a creeping assumption, and it was taken seriously, and there's no one been held to account. But the reality is, somewhere along the line, someone needs to be held to account. And that's the idea with a small business. You're held to account. Bunnings is not held to account too, because it's a major corporation. So there's all these people working inside of the bureaucracy or government bureaucracy. But small business, maybe medium as well, the mums and dads getting up early in the morning and they're selling hardware or whatever it is, they're ultimately responsible, because if the business fails, they fail and their family around it fails. But suddenly we're getting to a point where there is no responsibility. The responsibility is always collective responsibility. But it's really difficult for us in the resistance, because we still need that collective of everyone to fight against. And how good is it when you join in that collective? It's like theirs is a faux collective. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking on my feet here. I don't know what I'm going to say, but theirs is a sort of a faux collective, but ours is like real. But it's real because inside of it, there's still accountability is still really important.
And I guess that comes back again to the technology, which isn't a human soul thing that we're giving our all to. We're literally like, majority of people are like this instead of this, where we're really connecting. It's that technological reality, or the reality where we're going to come together. And we used to sit around in circle, holding hands, transferring energy around the fire, dancing, like.
Do you know
really
something
grounded.
really amazing?
Primal.
They've been protesting around the world for Australians. The latest one we heard was Germany, but the latest one today is Japan. So the enemies that were basically fascist states that attacked us and our forefathers fought them are now freer than us, especially Japan, because they've used ivermectin and basically eradicated COVID. And now they're outside our embassy praying for us that we can go back to being free. How extraordinary is that?
And Frankfurt, they had a thing there too. Yeah,
Frankfurt, yeah,
in Germany.
I think what's happening in Victoria is really significant in terms of a global scale, energy-wise. There's just something that, like, personally, I feel even with Ballarat, with Victoria as a whole, that it's all eyes on Australia. Like Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. So I feel that whatever they're trying to implement here in terms of the passport, I think that this is ground zero. I think this is the landing platform for their grand scheme. And if they can successfully implement it here, well, there we go, all over the world.
Lucky, yes.
And if people are out there in other countries tapping into that, I guess that might be why they're standing up, because they're starting to go, oh, hang on. If they get away with what's happening in Victoria, it's gonna ricochet, domino effect around the world.
That's great. Anyway,
it doesn't mean I have to sit around in a circle holding hands, does it? Really?
do you want to offer any message?
It might come to that. If we go totally off grid.
Dear.
I'm going to wrap it up today, because usually we go over. I'm just going to wrap it up because I actually have another meeting to go to, so I'm going to be late for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up by allowing you to offer something to your village, your town, any message of hope, anything you want to say to us, and then we'll finish with one final thing after that.
I love that you say to your village. That's beautiful. I guess the hold the line thing has been really significant. Hold the line, having patience, having trust, having faith, and coming together. I want to offer a shoulder and an ear to anybody because that's what I'm here for. That's what I do, hold space. But then going over what the values are for Eureka now, which is E, equality, U for unity, R, respect, E,
Eels?
I've gone
Egg.
equality.
Eels, eggs.
Enough.
C, K for kindness, and A for acceptance. We're losing our values, and if we just come back to that and not get into the confrontation, I think that that's what's going to be more powerful in reuniting us all.
I agree. I think we've got a better future to offer than what the other tribe is offering. I think we're offering
absolutely. That. That's not sustainable.
Just before we go out, I've got a thing of yours, your final speech that I want to end on, but just letting everybody out there know, in Friday, the 10th, we're going to do our show live from Shepparton. And Tofa, not tofu, as Damien often calls him, Tofa.
I just want to eat him.
What's happening in Shepparton?
I'll just let me finish. Craig Backman might come and talk to Craig today. That's the great police officer who has been doing a lot of amazing speeches. Craig will come. He's put himself down. Morgan is trying to come, but he's got another gig somewhere, but he's bursting at the bit to come. And a few others might tag along.
I think Rick Sean might be coming, yeah?
No, he can't make it. But there's so there's just a get together of people. It's not a protest. It's just a get together of people in a park, jumpy castle, stuff like that. And we're just coming up to be a part of that meet.
We'll do the show. We'll do the show live from there.
We'll do the show from there. We'll set up what we do. We set up a little table with our laptop and our little webcam, and we just interview anyone from there that wants to talk, and we stream it live. We go for about 2 hours. Amazing. We did in Ballarat. It was so humbling and beautiful. And another thing that I'm learning, because Barry, our tech guy, Wonder Tech, he gets us going around interviewing people. And people often say this to me. They go, oh, I'm fumble my words. I don't know what to say. I've got nothing to say. And when they speak, they're so articulate and passionate. I realize they've been taught that they've got nothing to say by the system. The system is taught them, you're an idiot. You've got nothing to say. Just shut up. You'll mumble it. You'll screw it all up. And then once you get them going and they free themselves of that, they just go. And so on the page, I'll put it on your page too, Jayde, but on the page of Cafe Lockdown is Damien and I's interview with the people from Ballarat. It's great. It goes for about 40 minutes. You'll love it. Hear from the protesters themselves of why they were there and what they're fighting for.
It had me in tears. It was amazing.
Oh, it did great.
No vaccine passports. That's what we're saying. No vaccine passports.
That's it. We're not anti-vax. We're pro-choice, but we're anti-bullshit.
No passport.
And we've got enough bullshit.
I love that.
Jayde, there's a lot of people out there too that say that the younger generation are like asleep and don't know what they're doing. You're living proof that that's bullshit. More bullshit.
Oh, they're rising.
Amazing
teenagers
speaker.
out there the other day saying that when they get asked for their vax passports and the mask, they'll just walk in and go, nah.
Well,
Like,
look,
keep
amazing
doing
speaker.
that. Give them hell, kids.
And how the little kids that got up and
tag along.
how about all the little kids that got up in Melbourne too at the front of the Flinders Street station? Just a whole pack of little kids got up and said,
It's amazing.
said what their parents have been telling them basically, but hey, it works for our side the same as the other side.
It's like my son Cooper's only 5 and he says to everyone, "Oh, we're going to change the world. We're going to save Eureka."
Yeah. Where are you getting that from, mate?
I have to go. But Jayde, if you want to come and you want to bring Zoe up to Shepparton, let us know. It's a new thing. I'll give you some more info about that. I hate to do this. I have to go. But this is how Jayde got the march started. Jayde, huge, big fan of yours now.
Good on you, Jayde.
Big fan.
Thank
It was a great day. It was a fantastic day.
Ballarat,
Really good.
And
it was
Jayde's
really awesome.
family, watch this, look at it. You're bonkers. You made
And then we got to hang around at the end. Michael, remember that? We got to hang around at the end and you fed us. There was an entourage of about 7 of us.
Yeah.
Came down in a minibus and we were all welcome to stay at the barbecue and eat. It was fantastic. It was really good. Thanks,
absolutely.
That's what we're all about.
Really awesome.
And anyone's welcome to join. We meet every Sunday down at the Eureka Stockade. We're just getting people back together.
Okay, here she goes. And good night, Australia. It was nice to be back. Sorry, we'll talk about Saturday tomorrow because Saturday was huge, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. We'll be back. And I got Damo a Christmas present, which we'll reveal on Wednesday.
I want a Christmas present.
Melbourne's old news. It was Ballarat's turn, Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good night, Australia. This is
Good night.
And listen to Jayde take this out.